parents abandoned me as a child because I wasn't as smart as my twin, but when they tried to reconnect, years later, I introduced them to my new family, and it didn't go well. This is just a vent post, but any advice would be appreciated. Hello everyone. 10 years ago, when I was 12, my parents sent me to live with my uncle, my dad's older brother, in the countryside. They didn't want to take care of me anymore. They thought I was a burden, and they'd much rather raise my twin sister, whom they believed was far more capable than I was. And I don't deny it. She was a lot cleverer than me. Unfortunately, I couldn't keep up. I was mostly just average, but in a family of overachievers, average doesn't cut it. My parents were both doctors, and they'd decided that my sister and I were also going to become doctors, just like them. But if I'm being honest, I never had any interest in academics. I was more inclined toward creative endeavors, and that's what I really wanted to do with my life. They used to put me under tremendous pressure, and I wasn't doing well at school. It didn't help that my parents weren't even trying to encourage me to do better. Instead, they insulted me and constantly compared me to my twin sister. I was used to that sort of treatment from a very young age, but with time, it just kept getting worse. By the time I was 12 and in middle school, I was doing so badly that I was flunking most of my classes. Even though I was trying my best, I couldn't score better. My teachers constantly complained about me because they didn't know how things were at home. They just thought I was lazy and unwilling to try hard enough. Even people at school compared me to my brilliant twin sister, who was doing so much better than I was. I was literally crying myself to sleep every night, because every single day, my parents made it a point to remind my sister how much they loved her, and remind me how much of a disappointment I was. They'd tell me I needed to do better. One night, things got so bad. At dinner, they insulted me about my grades again, and I lashed out at them. They grounded me for 2 weeks. So I decided to run away from home. I didn't even know where I was going. I only made it to the nearby park, where I sat alone, lonely, and terrified in the dark. They found me there around 5 a.m. They'd called the cops to track me down. After they brought me back home, that was the day they decided to ship me off to my uncle's house in the countryside. When they told me, I begged them not to do it. I promised I'd be better, that I wouldn't disappoint them again or try to run away. But they didn't care. They said I'd let them down, and they couldn't deal with me anymore. They had another child to take care of, and they couldn't spend all their time on someone who'd proven to be useless, time and again. I don't even think that was true. They spent most of their time fawning over my sister. They barely cared about me unless it was time to make fun of me for how badly I was doing at school. Anyway, I kept begging them not to send me away, because I didn't want to be separated from my sister. She was literally the only person in that family who was nice to me. But they didn't listen. They did what they wanted. They made me say goodbye to my sister, and then they didn't even allow her to be there for me on the ride to my uncle's house. Once I got there, I couldn't stop crying for weeks. All I wanted was to go home. I kept trying to call my parents, and my uncle and aunt were really helpful and supportive during that time because they understood what I was going through. But my parents didn't pick up any of my calls. They ignored me completely. A few weeks later, I decided to accept my fate and make peace with it. I stayed in touch with my sister though. She was the only person who would speak to me, but it had to be done in secret because she didn't have a cell phone. I had to call her from my uncle's home phone whenever my parents were away. Social media was just getting popular at the time, thankfully, so she would use the computer to talk to me. Occasionally, when she told me the coast was clear, I'd call her, and we'd finally get to talk. My sister and I are still in touch. We love each other, and that's how it's always going to be. She's kept me updated on what's been going on with her and our parents over the past 10 years. She even told me that our parents were planning to reach out to me a couple of weeks ago, which is how I was able to prepare myself mentally for it. For the past 10 years, I had absolutely no contact with my parents. Initially, it was because they refused to get in touch with me or even speak to me after they dropped me off at my uncle's house. After a couple of years living with my uncle and aunt, I was the one who wasn't interested in reaching out to them ever again. They had abandoned me. That was the end of the story. Honestly, after I moved in with my uncle and aunt, my life got so much better. They didn't put me under the kind of pressure my parents had, and I started doing better at school. I was still average academically. I wasn't the straight-A student my sister had always been. But at least I wasn't flunking all my classes. My uncle and aunt also allowed me to take part in other activities, like school plays and sports, which my parents had forbidden because they thought it would badly affect my grades. I was living my life to the fullest, and I was very happy with them. When I lived with my parents, I was also forbidden from talking to boys because they thought it would distract me. My uncle and aunt, however, didn't have any such ridiculous restrictions. They allowed me to talk to whoever I wanted, and I was allowed to bring friends home too. Coincidentally, that's how I met my husband, who's been there for me all along. We've been together for the past 7 years. We got together in high school and have been inseparable ever since. We even attended the same college. I graduated last year, and 1 week after we graduated together, we got married in an intimate ceremony. Last month, I gave birth to our son. I don't live with my uncle and aunt anymore. My husband and I have a house a few streets away from them, but we visit them quite frequently, and they come over to see our son too. I'm on maternity leave right now, so I don't have to go back to work for another few weeks. My sister has openly been in touch with me for the past few years because after she turned 18, she decided she didn't feel the need to hide our bond from our parents anymore. There was nothing they could do about it. She was the maid of honor at my wedding and is the godmother to my child as well. Last week, while she was visiting us, she told me that our parents planned on paying me a visit. They still didn't know I was married and had a baby because pretty much everyone had stopped speaking to them after they abandoned me. It was such a heartless thing to do, so they hadn't known anything about my life. My sister didn't think it was necessary to talk to them about me, so she didn't tell them anything, even when they asked. But after 10 years, they were finally feeling some sort of regret about what they had done all those years ago and were planning on reaching out to me. My sister thought it was her duty to tell me about it so I could decide what I wanted to do, and it wouldn't come as a shock when they contacted me. A couple of days after her visit, my parents indeed reached out to me through social media, asking if they could visit. They didn't apologize for anything. It was just a plain message with the two of them asking if they could visit. Nothing else. I was a little let down by that message because I had genuinely expected them to at least say they were sorry for the way they had treated me in the past. For a little while, I was so pissed that I thought about not responding to the message at all. But then I had a better idea. I thought I'd invite them over and show them my life now because I've built something great, and I thought it would be fitting to let them see how well I was doing without them. So I gave them my address and invited them over for dinner on the weekend. I also invited my uncle, aunt, and my sister. Obviously, my husband and son were going to be there because the dinner was being hosted at my house. I didn't tell my uncle and aunt that my parents were going to be there, so everybody was very surprised to see each other when they showed up at my house last weekend. This was 3 days ago, and I still don't know if I did the right thing or not. Anyway, once everybody was here, things were pretty awkward. Obviously, I hadn't seen my parents in 10 years, and everybody in the family had cut them off, including my uncle and aunt, since they didn't want anything to do with my parents either. The reason behind it was that my parents had promised not only to support me financially for as long as I was living with my uncle, but also to keep in touch so I didn't get lonely and my emotional needs were met. But they only lived up to half of that promise. They did send money every month, but they didn't bother to keep in touch with me. They were just glad to be rid of me. That wasn't the deal my uncle had signed up for, and he was upset that my parents were abandoning me emotionally. But he didn't mind taking care of me, so he was the one who stood up for me and told the rest of the family what my dad was doing. Everybody else cut my father off for that reason, which led to a lot of bad blood between them. My dad still continued to send money until I turned 18, but after that, there was no contact between them either. After greeting each other, we were supposed to have dinner together, but I decided to make a toast before that. As if things weren't awkward enough, I decided to lean into it and make it even worse because I wanted my parents to feel sorry. I wanted to make them feel bad. So, I got up and started making a speech about how beautiful the last 10 years of my life had been compared to the first 12. I framed it as a tribute to my uncle and aunt because, honestly, they had done so much for me over the past decade. I don't think I would have made it this far in life without them. I also thanked my husband for being by my side every step of the way, and my sister for never giving up on me, despite everything we'd been through. Very pointedly, I decided to snub my parents in my speech because I didn't have anything to thank them for. They noticed too. Throughout my speech, they kept their eyes downcast and didn't say a word. Once I was done, I decided to rub it in even more. I turned to my parents and told them I was finally ready to introduce them to my new family. They were shocked to their core. I don't think they were expecting me to say something like that. As soon as I declared, "This is my new family," my mother burst into tears and literally ran out of the room. Honestly, we all would have been better off without the drama. After they left, we had an awkward, quiet dinner together. Nobody stayed for dessert, and I was glad because the atmosphere was just too heavy. I don't like my parents, but I didn't feel entirely right about what I'd done. I haven't had a chance to speak to my uncle and aunt yet, but both my sister and my husband think I took things too far. They said I shouldn't have even responded to my parents' messages if I didn't want to interact with them. Humiliating them like that was unnecessary. I agree. Inviting them over just to embarrass them was probably too much. Hello everyone. To keep this video going, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us continue bringing you great stories. So, if you enjoy our content, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support makes a huge difference. Alright, let's keep going. Update 1. Alright, so the comments so far have been pretty divisive about whether or not I should apologize to my parents, but everyone agrees I should at least talk to my uncle and aunt. Since the jury's still out on my parents, I decided to contact my uncle today. It's been a week since the family dinner I hosted, and we hadn't talked much because I've been really busy, and so have they. I also think the awkwardness was still lingering, so we avoided each other to keep things from getting uncomfortable. Today, I finally called my uncle. Before he could say anything, I apologized for inviting my parents to dinner without giving him a heads up. He admitted he was a little shocked I'd done that, but he said he'd gotten over it. He hadn't reached out because he wasn't sure how I was feeling after that night. He agreed things had gotten pretty awkward, but he told me it was all water under the bridge and didn't matter anymore. Then I called my aunt and apologized to her too. She had a similar reaction. Now that I've apologized to both of them, I don't feel as guilty. Personally, I don't feel like I owe my parents an apology. After everything they put me through in my childhood, I don't think anyone would blame me for behaving the way I did. They haven't apologized to me, so I don't see why I should apologize to them. I talked to my husband about it, since he'd suggested I apologize. I explained that even though what I did at dinner was uncalled for, the way I'd been treated in the past wasn't acceptable either. He seemed to understand where I was coming from, so he didn't push it. I said the same thing to my sister, and while she was a little skeptical, she told me it was ultimately my decision. I was the one who'd been wronged, so whatever I decided to do was fair enough. My sister hasn't been able to get in touch with our parents either. They've been suspiciously quiet for the past week, but I'm guessing they're just laying low for now. I'm sure they'll reach out again soon, demanding an apology or trying to stir up some drama. Update 2. Hi. I just want to clear something up. My sister isn't trying to be diplomatic by maintaining a relationship with our parents, and even if she is, I'm fine with that. It doesn't need to be such a big deal in the comments, which I've been noticing. She knows what they did to me was wrong, but she was also very young back then. It's not like she could have stood up for me or protested. She was against the idea at the time, but we were so little that our opinions didn't matter. She couldn't have done anything. She did her best by keeping in touch with me, and that's enough. The reason she's still in touch with our parents is that they're getting older, and she doesn't want to abandon them. It's not deeper than that. So please don't accuse her of anything. It's completely unnecessary. We have a lot of love for each other, and we don't think the comments about her are justified. Now, onto what happened next. As I mentioned in my last update, I was pretty sure my parents weren't going to sit back and take what I'd done lightly. They're not the kind of people who let things go easily, so I'd been prepared for some kind of retaliation. And it finally happened today, 10 days after the dinner I hosted. They decided to go public with the incident and posted all about it on social media. I was surprised because they don't usually have an active social media presence, but for this one incident, they made an exception. Just as I expected, it was a very one-sided post. They only talked about how hurt they were, without mentioning any of the things they'd done in the past. I wouldn't have cared about the post if it had been directed at our family members, since nobody in my family likes my parents after what they did to me. But they were clever about it. They tagged my co-workers and even my husband's co-workers, even though he had nothing to do with this entire fiasco. Obviously, my co-workers weren't aware of my history with my parents or our strained relationship, so they were all pretty shocked when they got tagged in that post. They started blowing up my phone almost immediately. I'm on maternity leave, so I didn't know what they'd posted. I wasn't at work, and I don't check social media often because I'm usually busy with my son. But after they started messaging me, telling me to check out what had happened online, I was shocked. I didn't know how to react because I hadn't been expecting any of it. I'm pretty sure my parents found my co-workers' accounts by stalking me online. I have quite a few pictures with them, and I'd tagged them in posts, so that's probably what they'd been doing all week. Stalking me, trying to figure out who I was friends with at work, so they could ruin my reputation. Anyway, I saw the post. I was stunned for a couple of minutes, but then I decided to comment and tell people the truth. I didn't have anything to hide. I was the victim in this situation, and while what happened at dinner was uncalled for, it wasn't unjustified. I typed out the entire incident, how they'd dropped me off at my uncle's house all those years ago, refused to stay in touch, and even when they reached out to me, they never apologized. If they had, I might have reconsidered saying the things I did. But in my opinion, what I did wasn't wrong. I also clarified the situation to my co-workers who'd been tagged in the post. I apologized to them on my parents' behalf because they didn't deserve to get dragged into our drama. It was ridiculous of my parents to do something like this. I'm obviously pretty pissed off because they could have just targeted me and kept things clean, but dragging my co-workers into it, that's below the belt and completely unacceptable. I've been waiting for my husband to get home. I didn't want to bother him at work today because he had an important meeting with a client. Otherwise, I might have contacted him and told him about this. But honestly, this is just petty drama, and I can handle it on my own. I've already spoken to my sister, and she thinks our parents are being crazy right now. They probably couldn't handle the disrespect and completely lost it. I think that's exactly what happened. But even then, nothing justifies this sort of behavior. I haven't told my uncle or aunt about this yet because I'm sure they'll have strong reactions and I don't want to trouble them right now. They're pretty busy with work. Update 3. A couple of hours have passed since my last update. It's 8 p.m. now and everyone's at my house. My uncle, aunt, sister and husband, who just got back from work. We're trying to figure out how to deal with this situation. I don't want to go to a lawyer like a lot of you suggested. I really don't have the time or energy to file a petition and deal with all that. It's just not necessary. I want to handle this personally and keep lawyers out of it for as long as possible. Of course, if they refuse to take the post down, I might have to get in touch with an attorney and file a defamation lawsuit or whatever they deem appropriate. But until then, we're going to try our best to get them to take it down. So far, everyone has texted them and told them to take it down, but they haven't responded. They haven't even deleted my comment, so at least everyone who sees the post will know the truth. A significant number of people have seen it. It's getting a lot of traction for some reason, and that's not good for me because I don't come off looking great in their post. It's not just my co-workers who've seen it. A couple of my acquaintances have too, and they're asking me about it. I don't know how it popped up on their feeds, probably because I was tagged in the post. I've removed the tag, but it's still showing up on people's feeds. I figured there must be some glitch with the app, but it's just not good for me. People keep reaching out to me personally, asking about it again and again. It's getting really annoying, and I just want this to blow over. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I don't get contacted by HR, because that might spell trouble for me. I really don't want to ruin my reputation at work because of my parents. As of now, my family and I are still trying to figure out how to get them to take the post down, but they're not responding. Tomorrow, my sister is going to visit my parents and ask them to take it down in person. That might work. If they still refuse, we'll have no other option but to go after them with an attorney. I'm really hoping it doesn't come to that because it's going to be a lot of work, and right now, I just want to spend time with my son. That's what my maternity leave is for, not dealing with their stupid little shenanigans. Update 4. Hey, so my sister went to visit my parents today for about an hour. I had no idea what was going on, but just half an hour ago, she told me she'd spoken to them. They said they were very upset, which is why they made that post and tagged my co-workers. My guess was correct. They'd found my co-workers' social media accounts by stalking me online. That's pretty creepy, but honestly, it's the least of my concerns right now. My sister told me she had a long discussion with them, and they said they'd take the post down, but only if I apologized to them first. I instantly told her that was a hard no for me. I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm going to stand by that. Thankfully, she knew I wasn't going to apologize, so she told them to save their time and energy because I wasn't going to pretend I was sorry for something I didn't do wrong. She warned them that if they didn't take the post down, I'd come after them with a lawyer, and that wouldn't end well for them. The discussion went on for almost an hour, and in the end, they agreed to take the post down. But they also told my sister to tell me they're cutting me out of their lives and out of the inheritance. I really don't care about any of that. I just want the post gone. They can keep their inheritance. It means nothing to me. My husband and I are doing well career-wise, and we know we'll be fine financially. Even if we're not, I'm okay with that. At least I don't have to rely on them for money. My sister told me she relayed all of this to them, so they're aware of how I feel. Now that this is dealt with, I'm going to spend the rest of my maternity leave with my son and make the most of it before I have to go back to work. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown me.